Good morning, Mr Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. The money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. And it's pretty clear that none of you have learned anything. You know, when you yourself, Mr Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I suppose I could applaud you for having a sense of humour, but isn't this really just the bunker mentality?
Who is that man, and will he become Prime Minister of Canada, please? Is there a future for the European community and the European project, as they grandly call it? Nigel Farage is leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, UKIP, and a member, ironically I suppose, of the European Parliament. He joins us from London. That was a wonderful speech. Well done.
Well, thank you. I mean, the whole point about parliamentary politics is that you're supposed to have a government and an opposition. And what's happened in Europe over the course of the last 3 or 4 decades is the entire political class have been taken in by the European project. Of course, it pays them very well to do that. And we've had a European Parliament where nobody's been giving any opposition. Well, it's different now. There is an opposition group in that Parliament, which I'm very proud to lead.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are similarities in Canada. We have a political establishment, a political class. I don't think it's so pronounced here, but many times we've been led into things, attitudes towards major issues such as the death penalty, Quebec separation or whatever, and one group thinks a certain way, but the mass of people probably think another. I was a young man, very young, in Britain when we went into the European community, and it was the great centre-block consensus, all the chattering classes who said we must go in. I don't think many people really understood what it was all about.
Well, no. I mean, the common market was sold to us, or I say to us, I was too young to vote, but it was sold to my parents' generation as being about extending free trade, friendship, and an absolute promise was made that it wasn't to do with political union, and they wouldn't make laws that would damage British interests. Well, here we are 37 years on, and we now find that 75% of the laws that are made in Britain every year are not made with the British government through the British Parliament. They're made by the institutions of the EU, and there's nothing we can do to change any of it. So frankly, you know, my mum and dad's generation feel they were lied to, and those of us that are under the age of 54 have never even had the opportunity to express an opinion on this. So, you know, one talks about the democratic deficit. Goodness me, this is a gaping chasm.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I'm 53, so I'm exactly that age. I really, when I lived in Britain half my life, never had any opportunity. Now, this will have an enormous resonance with Canadians too, how people are treated who have committed acts of terror, who have a vague connection to either Britain or Canada. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was over there in London, a known terrorist to be deported, good riddance, but powers beyond in Europe said, no, you can't do this, it wouldn't be fair. You're losing the great national pride and right of self-governance you had for so long.
Well, we're losing pride and self-governance, and we're also losing something that had evolved and emerged in this country really since Magna Carta. And that was the idea that we had an independent judiciary, we had a very good set of rules, the citizen was protected against the state, but the state, if it decided through its courts, could act. And here we have known terrorist suspects, people who actually were involved in various terrorist atrocities around the world, and we're not allowed to deport them because a European court says so. And I can tell you, this is provoking an absolute howl of outrage in this country, and quite rightly so. And of course, other countries around the world, Commonwealth countries like yours, you understand the common law system. In Europe, they don't have that kind of system.
Well, we do and we don't. I mean, things aren't so rosy, and in fact, just tomorrow we have a man called Ezra Levant, who's one of our broadcasters here, on to talk about his new book on Omar Khadr, who is very, very tenuously, vaguely Canadian, but we brought back here the chattering classes think he's a pin-up boy. But let's talk more about this particular case, because this was a man who no one was denying he had links to terror. And they didn't even claim he would be tortured if he went back to his home country. It was that some of the information used to prosecute him may have been gained by the use of torture in the past.
Yes, that's right. And so the European Court judged that because some of this evidence had been gained in ways that we in Europe would not approve of, effectively it null and voided the man's deportation back to Jordan. But, you know, you could argue that this is an appalling judgment. You might argue that next week they make a good judgment, but none of that is actually the point. The point is that we have always been, for centuries, since the Normans, I suppose, an independent, self-governing free nation, able to make our own decisions. We are now subjugated to a new political order, and what we do, what the British government does, and what our civil service do, is they go to Brussels every week and they beg for crumbs from the table. Please don't impose this law upon us, it won't be good for the City of London. You know, please don't do this, it's damaging our fishing industry. And to think that this once great nation has sunk to this servile status where we beg to unelected bureaucrats in Brussels so they don't interfere too much in our lives, frankly, it is shaming to this nation, and the chattering classes, the political elite, I want to see them all removed from office. Let's get some fresh new politics in this country. Let's get our rights of self-government back. And I must say, I do think that Switzerland has a fantastic democratic model where if the people aren't happy with their parliament, they can call a referendum on any given subject. That, I think, is the way forward, and that offers some hope and some vision to young people right across the Western world.
Okay. Two questions. The future of the euro, obviously Britain's not part of that, but does the euro have a future? And also the future of the European community, and will Britain actually go to the point of withdrawing?
Well, the euro is doomed. It was doomed from the start. I have been the great naysayer on this over many years. I'm not going to say I told you so, but just look at what's happening. I think that Greece and Portugal will probably leave the euro this year. I hope they do, for their sakes. They've got youth unemployment in those countries of nearly 50%.
Wow.
Mass violence on the streets of Athens and other Greek cities. This is serious. This is dangerous. This is stupid. We could even force a revolution in those countries. So the euro, as it's currently constructed, will fail. The bigger question is, of course, on the European project itself. I think that the vast majority of British people now recognise, whilst we want to trade with Europe, want to cooperate with Europe, want to be good next-door neighbours, we actually want to make our own laws, and we want to rediscover other parts of the world, such as the Commonwealth, which we stupidly turned our backs on 40 years ago. If we're going to have an economic future, we've got to be a global trading nation, not just a European trading nation. And, you know, I tell you something, UKIP may not be the biggest party in this country, but we now are right at the centre ground of public opinion on this massive issue. Over two-thirds of Britons do not now want to be part of this European Union. We're going to push on, we will get our referendum on this issue, and our country will, in a few years' time, be free.
Just very briefly, the most pro-European party, I suppose, is the Lib Dem party. I've got to tell you, I cannot stand them. However, they've fallen to about 8 or 9%. what sort of support do you have within the country? It's more than 8 or 9%, isn't it?
Yeah, we are. It's very interesting. In European elections, when we vote for the European Parliament, UKIP does incredibly well. Indeed, in the last ones in 2009, we came second across the entire United Kingdom. We beat not just the Lib Dems, but the governing Labour Party of the day. In national politics, we are now neck and neck with the Lib Dems in the opinion polls. It's harder for us to break through. We have a first-past-the-post electoral system here, which makes it very difficult. But UKIP's rise is rapid, steady, very, very solid. And I have to say, I used to work in financial markets. I believe in trends, and we're about to overtake the Lib Dems.
Good stuff. I wish you well. We'll have you back on the show. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.